We Have Issues is a weekly podcast full of reviews of comics and oversharing. We use grown-up language to make very childish jokes. You can find the show at wehaveissues.net, as well as anywhere else where average to not too bad podcasts can be found.
I don't think it's that bad to be picking up things from porn. To an extent, it's like, I think it gives you a good basic.
It's not great in terms of if all you there are bad lessons that men learn.
That's true, but then that's why you should talk to your partner.
Well, yeah,
that's like one thing.
But that's not something that you learn from porn or anyone. No one tells you to talk to your partner. But anyway, there are bad lessons that men can. So men can get the sense that like jizz on a face is somehow a decent end game, right? So that's one bad lesson. I don't think it even occurred to us before. Deep throating, you can sort of see, it's just an extension of something that people were already doing. Not everyone. I think a few people only learned how to have oral.
Yeah, but like that is like deep throat takes practice. Like that is impressive what she did for sure. Are you not impressed with deep throat?
Well, no, but you've got you can see how it's like when you, like the guy from Game of Thrones, just broke a record about carrying something. The guy who plays the Mountain broke some 3,000-year-old record for being the strongest man, yeah? Mm-hmm. When it comes to carrying stuff competitively, or when it comes to mountain climbing, or long jump, or deep throat, you can kind of understand how if people were already sticking a cock in their mouth, they'd be trying to, there'd be a level of, well, okay, this is a bigger cock than I was expecting. Most of them have just kind of flopped around in my mouth a little bit. But I don't want to. This one is bigger, but I reckon.
But considering the fact that you have a gag reflex. No one ever just thought, I can somehow go around that, and because I would immediately just think you'd choke if I didn't think it's possible. That's why I would agree that's why I wouldn't think about it.
I think it's probably a natural selection thing. I think probably a lot of people did choke. And then people got competitive and worked out that
Linda
you could avoid
Lovelace was like,
because sword swallowing was already a thing. So, I reckon people had been practicing putting stuff down their throat for a long time.
It's a good name for a blowjob, sword swallowing.
And so I think what probably you can understand how deeper, further, faster. These are things.
Quoting Miss Marvel.
But you're not sticking anything anywhere where you weren't already sticking stuff.
Right.
You're just doing it more.
So the first time someone did anal, you weren't impressed either.
What? Well, I mean, I don't know. Well, I imagine...
You were like, that's not inventive at all.
Well, probably not. No, I don't know. But, the facial, it doesn't serve anyone. It's entirely an aesthetic thing.
So you think if someone has a thing for it, it's more encoded and it's like a cultural thing rather than actually like a deep, innate thing?
I don't think it's... Obviously, I don't want to judge anyone.
Yeah, that's not what we do on this show at all. We never judge anyone.
I don't want to judge anyone. It just seems to be in my experience, in my experience of just life in general, less mess. Someone's gonna... you could either do it inside someone, or... You could do it inside something, or you could do it somewhere tidy.
I just remembered James talking about spinning on his wife's back.
Yeah, all of this stuff. It's that's impractical. That's even more impractical because people know how to wipe their face, but how often do they have to wipe their lower back?
Don't know. Don't ask me. Yeah, don't.
Sex is a lot easier.
I'm not having sex until marriage.
Okay, that's fine. and I totally respect that. But as a grown damn man in a loving marriage, I know.
I've never.
I guessed. Didn't want to assume.
Are you trying to say I'm?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to say.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, of course.
Brilliant.
That's obviously the conclusion to come to. But yeah, facials. I mean, they.
I love how the conversation starts with, but yeah, facials.
I can. There's a power play thing going on there.
Okay.
Because you're saying, look, we could do this in a tidy way, but I'm going to put you in a position where at some point you have to wipe your face.
But I would like to point out that sex doesn't have to be about practicality, and you might be out of wage, and it might just be your age.
I imagine the first person who'd done a facial, and it probably didn't happen in the last 20 years. People have probably done it and thought, because there's a fetish for everything, pretty much.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's lots of fetishes.
But facials seem to have become quite mainstream. Like almost every porn clip you watch seems to finish on one, which is very weird. I imagine it was just like someone was, the lady or man didn't want to swallow, so they were like,
I don't know if that's any better though, because I get really
accidentally
concerned for those girls. I'm like, but what if it goes in your eye? Like, think about your makeup.
Well, exactly.
But like on the other hand, it was explained to me that it's like a territorial thing.
Yeah.
And it's, it's a thing, which is fair enough.
Makes it sound so good.
But it's fair enough. People are into worse things. Like, I have weird kinks. Like, lots of people have really weird kinks. Like, that's pretty normal, in my opinion.
I like wordplay.
Do you?
No, I don't. I don't really. I do not have any kinks at all.
Are you really vanilla?
My polymorphous perversion, that's my kink. I like whatever the other person likes. If it makes her happy...
That's cute.
I can. Well, I mean, it sounds cute, but I do actually enjoy. I'm still just as disgusting as any other man at the moment where I get excited, because we're like pigs. I don't mean we're like pigs in a behavioural we just take what we want and we're disgusting. I mean, we sound like pigs.
Yeah, but that's pretty cute. Kink, in my opinion. That's as cute as it gets, really.
I don't mean like Babe the Pig, Jessie.
But you're like, you're happy to just be happy if she's satisfied type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cute. I mean, it sucks for her, because then she's like, oh, what do you want me to do? Just be happy.
Yeah, it does sound pretty cute, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm probably...
I mean, no one's like hooked up and suspended, so... That's
unless she likes that, in which
so
case...
you would like that?
I think I might do. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, that is pretty interesting. We are so professional today.
I don't know what's going on. We started an hour early, and it's now 10 minutes to when we would have been getting in the room anyway.
So yeah, we haven't wasted time. It's fine.
So this is We Have Issues.
Hi, listener.
Hi, listener. This week it's me, Nick, and Jessie, who
Hello.
you just heard. We'll be talking about comics in a little bit. We won't be talking about that many comics, but depending on how the edit has worked out, you probably just listen to about half an hour of us talking about cocks.
Not just cocks. There's a lot more to that discussion.
But it's typical that because we live in a patriarchal society, we have mainly been talking about cocks.
We can talk about vaginas now.
We can, but we've kind of just decided that we're starting the show. I've decided, as the man in charge,
that
vaginas aren't as important.
Me.
I'm sorry.
Brilliant.
There was a lot of... Did you read Sex Criminals this week?
Last week? I got halfway through, and then there was a whole page of vaginas, I realised I'm not allowed to read this in college without looking like a fucking pervert.
It is
like, how do I explain to people, no, it's not just about sex, I swear, and then the whole page of vaginas. It is
one of those weird comics. Although there are a few of them now. Autumnlands is similar, actually, that you kind of want to make sure there's not a window behind you and you're in Starbucks, which is where I read most of my comics.
Well, that's the thing, that you can't... it's really hard to explain to people that you're not reading the comic for sex.
Yeah.
Because that's not why you're reading the comic. And you're like, oh, no, it's really cool, I swear I'm not... I'm sorry. Like...
It's interesting because we're currently in a time where there are enough of us online talking, or there's enough of a culture online that if you're into comics, if you're into comics, then there's absolutely no doubt in your mind that they can't be for anyone, that it's a medium rather than a genre, and there can be all sorts of different things covered in comics, and they can have adult themes, and they can have adult images in them and stuff like that. But I think we still kind of, for now, live in a world where, for the most of the people who don't read comics, that we end up engaging with when we're not on the internet, like when we're in public places and stuff, they still kind of do think, and it's kind of our fault that they do, because we do mostly talk about and put on the screen superhero stuff.
Yeah, and then they get
they still think it's kind of for kids.
That looks a bit dodgy, yeah. I see.
So you're reading a comic that has vagina in, and like, well, of course that's going to... I mean, Sex Criminals is a bit of an odd case because there is a lot of sex in it.
Yeah, there is, but that's not... You're not reading it for the sex, and the sex isn't like a... Ooh.
It's not sexy sex.
Yeah, it's not sexy sex. You're reading it because it's... I dare I say it's educational.
It's a very...
It's honest.
Yeah, it's a really great... That's why I like it when you talk about it, actually, because... For me, as a 40-year-old guy, there's loads of stuff in there about people who are already convinced that they're like... That most of the characters in it are like late 20s, I guess.
Yeah, they're far older than me, though, yeah.
But they are supposed to be people who feel like they've already fucked up their lives. You know, they're in these grown-up kind of boring positions, and they're trying to subvert the situation they're in. So it's really interesting to see what someone who hasn't necessarily...
fucked up their life, yeah.
Well, who hasn't necessarily got to the point where they're taking a shit, that they're in a bank, and they work in a bank, and they've got the ability to stop time, and the first thing they think of to do with it is to shit in their boss's pot plant. You'd hope that someone a bit younger might have more imaginative things that they think to do with it.
That's funny, but that's not like the thing that appeals to me, though. The bit that appeals to me is like the true honesty about sex in Sex Criminals. The bits where she talks about when she was younger and how she was discovering like sex as Susan, and she talks about that, and then she talks about how when she goes to the gynecologist for the first time and she asks about sex, and like, what do you do after you have sex? What happens? Because she's trying to find out what's happening to her when she like comes and she goes in the cum world. And then she's like, what do you do when you have sex? And then the gynecologist goes, you turn over and you go to sleep with your husband, Susan. like, it's so great because it makes you realize how fucking ridiculous it sounds that you should be only having sex when you're married.
Yeah. That's the thing about sex education, isn't it? That's a mess. It's talking to people who are going through the most confusing, not just sexually, but like just completely identity-wise, going through the weirdest stuff, and then it's just feeding them this really restricted sex is about reproduction, etc., etc.
It's not even reproduction, but I get annoyed now to the point where when people say, when mommy and daddy, or when two people love each other very much, they have sex. Like, they don't have to love each other very much, because then you tell these kids that sex equals love, and that, and then, girls like end up thinking that, I love him, I guess I should have sex with him now. Like, that's not really how it works, and you really shouldn't be telling children that, because it's going to come, like, they're going to grow up with a really distorted view.
Well, there's that. From that side, you're absolutely right. And then at the same time, they're teenagers. They're probably going to end up having sex regardless. And then the only people talking to them about it with any sort of authority are saying, no, normal people only have sex in these very specific situations for these very specific reasons. And you've got no coping strategy for it. At the worst end, you think you're a slut.
Oh yeah, that's always.
Fun. We are mainly obviously in that case we're talking about women, but like guys don't have the same problems or even remotely as many problems, but they get very confused.
I've always found that it's the other way around for guys, because then like one of the first insults that like I found people go for is like, oh, you fucking virgin, or like, oh, I bet your dick is small. Like, you go for that kind of thing, and no wonder we're having all these problems with like sexism, when guys think that they have to sleep with lots of women and treat them like shit to get like some fucking respect. but with other men, which is, once again, thanks society.
It is really weird. But it's also going to happen anyway, because that's what boys and men, when they're around they're only relating to each other and they don't know any better, and you're very focused on your genitals because they're the thing that you're just discovering, and that's the place where most of your changes are happening. And you're in these weird communal, situations where you're in changing rooms during PE and stuff like that. So men, boys, without girls around at all, would end up focusing on size or development or where you're developing, whether or not you're growing hair and stuff like that. Yeah. So there's already that kind of, I'm making lots of hand signals because I'm Greek. There's already that kind of seething pot of nonsense, and it's poisonous.
Oh yeah, it's
and then you encounter
poisonous.
Girls and you just spill it out all over them, just on any part of them that they'll let you.
Really, we're back to this.
Yeah, but I mean, and then at the same time, women are telling each other completely different. Really, a lot of the time, girls are telling each other.
Do you know what I found? The
stuff.
most common thing. Well, not piece of advice, but a piece of thing they say to a girl. I found from whether it's someone older than me, but usually they go, yeah, your first time is going to suck. That is the mentality that girls have to put up with, that you're not going to be taken care of at all. It's going to suck. It's going to hurt. You're going to hate it.
Yeah, that's not good.
And then they're like, yeah, but you'll get over it. Brilliant. And then the guys on the other hand are like, oh yeah, I got her to come 5 times or whatever.
I think there's this, I think there's a quite, and because sex education doesn't do anything to address how confused everybody is, and how they're going to be thinking about this stuff and doing this stuff anyway, no one else is talking to young people about this stuff either. You end up with this really messed up situation where people start making weird decisions, lots of girls. I remember when I was at school, lots of girls would go and start dating guys who seemed really old, but were probably only about 20 or 22, 23, 24. And they'd be like, because those guys are sophisticated or whatever. And it's that would end up being a thing where the boys that were the same age as you were, and this sounds like resentment from me, but really it wasn't. I don't think it is. The boys that were the same age as you were just stupid. Because boys at that age are really stupid.
Yeah, but I think everyone is.
Yeah,
I mean, girls are a lot more rational, I think. They have to think very quickly ahead.
Well, because society punishes them for pretty much any decision they make anyway. And so, everyone's really stupid, but everyone's also telling girls they have to be more responsible, or they are more responsible. And then the only people they can find who are even remotely sensitive to their needs are guys in their 20s or older. Yeah. But then, of course, those are guys in their 20s who are going out with 14 or 15-year-old girls.
But I don't know. I've never had any of my friends go out when I was 15 or 14, go out with 20-year-olds. I think that's too much. But 17 or 18-year-olds, I get that, because that mentality is not that different. I mean, maybe a little bit, but I don't think it is. And I don't think it's that bad.
Secondary school was a mess where I was.
I went to an all-girls school. I can't really say much. Yeah, I didn't experience guys very well until I got to college, and I hated everyone.
I was in a pretty small town, I think. So, and I think I was always in pretty small towns. So I guess there weren't that many options for anyone going around. I don't know. It's very odd. But yeah, I mean, so the cool thing about the first arc of Sex Criminals, it focuses a lot on Susie, and it focuses on both of them developing, doesn't it? It focuses on both of them talking about their teens or their adolescence or whatever.
His is a little bit more standard, I think, but you don't really. I found that this doesn't happen very often when a girl talks about the true stigma in such a mainstream way. Because usually, if this was a comic about anything else, and it was focusing on a female specifically, this would just be brushed off as feminist garbage.
Yeah, it's not hectoring.
Pisses me off.
Well,
hers is quite relatable, and it really describes the stigma of asking about sex, especially for a girl.
It's probably just a coincidence that it's a husband and wife writing these books, but the thing that I've really responded to of Bitch Planet is, although obviously it's very appealing to feminists and to women, and there are really strong political or ideological, sociological points, but not points being made, but there's definitely that seam in it. Neither Sex Criminals or Bitch Planet really lectures the reader at all at any point.
I don't think I've ever had a comic hit so hard home like with Bitch Planet. Like, you wouldn't believe my... Like, I couldn't even go on and write anything on social media about it because I was like... Everything's been said. Like, this is it says everything. Like, just read it. Like, my only like comment to whenever anyone asks me on social media, like, what do you think about Bitch Planet? Like, just read it. It's just so good. It says everything in there, and like, it made me not like a stronger feminist, but like reaffirmed that I should not be thinking that feminist is a dirty word, and I should definitely not be taking shit from like the boys at college. Like, I genuinely lectured a guy the other day because he had sexist off comments every now and again, but I let it I just let it go. And then we were sat down and I was like, I'm going to point this out, and I'm not going to say it in a mean way, but you have been saying some things lately that I think me and my friend Ellie, we find quite offensive sometimes, and I don't know whether you're doing it intentionally or you don't realise it. So I'm going to explain it to you, and I'll point it out next time if that's okay. And he got very concerned because he didn't want to come off as sexist, and he wasn't sexist at all. But then he started saying things like, I don't want to call myself a feminist. And I was like... The thing is, there is such a long history with feminism. We need to use that word. There's a whole connotation to why we call it feminism. And it's not just about, helping the problems that women face, but like about men as well, which is a common mistake. And I always explain this to him, but I was like, that the reason why we don't say, equalitist or whatever is because feminism does have a connotation. Well, it's got its own... And it's got its own history. And there's a reason why women use it, because we still haven't won what we deserve. We still don't have what we should. And we've come so far to just brush it off as extremist or like, with like having the right to vote and brushing just that off and not using the word feminism is like, I think that's quite stupid. You forget how far women have come. Yeah,
I mean, it'd be nice if we got to a point where all of the problems were fixed and so far in the rearview mirror that different groups didn't need to give themselves specific names, and we could just say, no, everything's equal now and we are trying to maintain this equilibrium so we can call it something else, because men and women, we're all the same and it's fine. But yeah, we're not actually there at the moment. But having said that, from what you just said, there was a point not long ago where you'd have been a bit funny. The word feminist had connotations.
Yeah, I didn't want to label myself as a feminist, because then, all the guys would start making fun of me, essentially, saying, oh, you radical feminist, or go burn your bra, or whatever. Like, they wouldn't treat you seriously, and they wouldn't take your opinion seriously. But now I'm like, fuck it, I don't care. Like, read Bitch Planet. I want to start throwing copies of Bitch Planet at people. Well,
the point I make about Bitch Planet is that anyone can read it. Yeah. Because, like I said, it doesn't really lecture. So it has all of those things in. It's true to the spirit of the stuff that you care about, or that people should care about. But the story, that isn't what the plot's about. Or you can read it as just a straight future prison, apparently extreme sport sort of story, like a rollerball, or I already said this in my review a couple of weeks ago, but like a rollerball or a Running Man or something like that, or any sort of prison thing. And there's no point that it makes you feel that as a man reading it, you should targeted. You're targeted. Yeah. Which, I mean, on the one hand,
it doesn't target, but it points out the problem. It shows
points
that
out the problem as a social problem.
This is what it could be. Yeah.
Which I think is really interesting, because I think from a storytelling perspective, you can teach people things, or you can make people realize things through art. But if it's a storytelling medium, and if it feels like you've got characters saying things that are specifically the writer talking to the reader rather than especially it being part of the story. It's kind of like, well, okay, this isn't just a story like any other story. This is a political point that's being made, and then it's fine if you already agree with it, then you're going to love it. Mm-hmm. But if you don't necessarily understand the points being made, that's going to take you out of it. And that doesn't happen with Bitch Planet at all.
And then you get the lovely essay at the back, which I found. Have you read the essay at the back?
No, I'm a very busy man.
Well, the essay at the back definitely highlights the fact that Bitch Planet is written for this reason and that it's a feminist. But you don't have to read the essay at the back, but I think it's incredibly well written and pretty much says everything I've said so far about it.
In my defence, I don't tend to read the essays in the back of any comics.
Terrible. I mean, that especially good. I think you need to read it. Especially if they're written by women or people who like women. But generally speaking, no, I don't. I really like that comics are starting to do that. Mm-hmm. Especially stuff from Image tends to have lots of I
think it might have been Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips who started doing it with Criminal, putting essays in the back and putting extra little stories, but like either essays or stories, historical stories and stuff. But I'm normally rushing to read the next comic. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be reading text.
Well, that's your homework then. You have to go back and read the feminist essay at the back of Bitch Planet.
God, but I already...
It's not really an essay, it's just a couple of...
patriarchy's awful.
But you want to appreciate the words.
Someone put work into that.
Yeah,
so I should read it.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
But the good thing about Kelly Sue DeConnick and Matt Fraction, and they're not the only writers who do this, regardless of what the ideologies being shown are, is their story and characters are what they seem to see as important putting on the page. And I guess part of it is they can't, in some ways, Kelly Sue DeConnick can't help but write something that's true to feminist principles because she clearly feels really strongly about that stuff. Matt Fraction, similarly, but at the same time, I mean, the second arc, it starts to come in at the end of the first arc of Sex Criminals, but the second arc is pretty much entirely about men's mental health.
Yeah, very. So, I really enjoyed that part.
And once that starts sneaking in, especially if you've got a relationship with that stuff already, that surprises you and hits you really hard. Probably in the same way that the stuff about adolescent female sexuality comes in. It's weird because it looks quite baudy and rude.
It's really not though. I don't think. I found that incredibly interesting because I like. Part of feminism is, like you want to help make sure that both men and women are treated the same, and it's a higher risk of like suicide in men. And when I was reading through, I was like, this is exactly the problem. Like I find it really powerful, that part of the arc, and it's all coming together now from what I read.
It's really good. I like Sex Criminals, but there were some full-on vaginas.
Yeah, definitely, and a baby coming out of one.
Yeah, oh yeah, there was. That was a beautiful, miraculous moment.
Oh dear, never having children.
It's look, Jessie.
No, I'm not.
No, look, it seems pretty intense, but I've been there and it was pretty easy.
Yeah, you gave birth, didn't you? How was that?
I was in the room.
Did they have to sew you up after? Were you scarred for life?
No, it's a miracle. It's not really a miracle. It's.
I would be scarred for life. I am scarred for life. I watched a birth. It's terrible.
It's pretty intense.
I hate the human body. Do you know what happens then? You get like chemicals released, so that a woman forgets it. She forgets how fucking terrible birth is, so she has more kids. What?
I don't know.
I hate the human body.
I don't know if they forget. I don't know if they forget everything.
They forget like the feeling of it, so it's not as bad.
Apparently, not all of it.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't trust the.
It
was a magical moment.
Enough of it that you don't want. I mean, on the one hand, I think coming up to having the second child, there's a lot of the fear of the unknown is gone, but it's replaced by a very real fear of the known. there is no ambiguity about what happens.
I'm getting
now.
the feeling of it now, so can we stop? Because I genuinely hate that.
Look, have you ever like, so like you're walking along with your hand on a banister or something, and then a splinter goes up your fingernail.
I don't think it's quite the same.
And then you stub your toe. It can't be worse than that, because that's fucking agony. Okay? So it can't be worse than that, and that's what I believe.
I think having your vagina ripped might be a little bit worse. Just like by a tiny little bit.
All right, Jessie. Flaunting your vagina privilege there, because I can't possibly say, well, I don't have a vagina, so I can't possibly know what it would be like.
The usual lovely comeback that guys used to have. Oh yeah, well, try getting hit in the balls. Please stop.
It's not the same.
It's not the same.
No, I can.
It's never going to be the same.
I can vouch for that. It's not the same. You get really used to having your balls kicked when you've got children in the house.
Oh right.
It just keeps happening. You get very immune to it. That's kind of the other podcast that I do with James. We've just been talking about children. I'm very, very sorry, listener, if you're thinking I didn't tune in to listen to an episode of Two Grown Men, but with like a grown man and a grown woman.
Sorry for the vagina talk.
We will give you your money back. How's that?
In a galaxy not so far away, the people cried out for a hero, and they got Ray Gunn and Starburst.
What does a guy do in a situation like that? Buy the best-looking second-hand spaceship he can afford and launch headlong into his midlife crisis.
I need a ship, you have a ship, and a reason to take me with you. No, I will not explain why I need this. Just that if anyone knew it was me, both of us would be in a lot of trouble. Understand? And don't you want to be a hero?
The year is 2005. 40 years after the first moon landings, and humanity has spread to the stars. The Jameson Car and Rocket Company has spent the last 20 of those years cornering the off-world travel market, creating widespread human colonies across the galactic map for low prices. However, not all is well in this brave new world.
I had to destroy that planet. No other way to send the message, you see. And, of course, it really was spoiling my view.
What? Look, there's obviously been some crossing of wires. A misunderstanding, if you will.
I'm starting to think I should have left you and stolen a ship.
Ray Gunn and...
Starburst. Yeah, Starburst.
Starburst. Ray Gunn's little friend. An audio adventure in 6 parts. Visit www.raygunnandstarburst.co.uk to support our Kickstarter. Find Ray. Find him and bring him to me.
How can I turn up to something I am unaware is happening?
Bring me cream puffs.
This is a podcast about comics. We have kind of been talking about comics.
Yep.
We've been talking a lot about comics. This is a podcast about comics. You can talk to us online about comics or anything you fancy talking about, really. I'm on Twitter at Nixsight, Nixsight. Jessie's on Twitter.
I am on Twitter now. Yeah, you can tell me how wrong I was talking about whatever I was talking about just now.
You've never been wrong about anything.
I'm flawless.
You have the certainty of youth.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I'm Deadpool's girl. Like, I am Deadpool's girl.
No apostrophe.
No apostrophe.
There's no such thing on Twitter.
Someone took Deadpool's girl.
Jessie's also on Instagram.
At just Deadpool's girl. Just, yeah, Deadpool's
no
girl.
just on the front of that. Only
so good at
Deadpool's
promoting
girl.
myself.
No, it's fine, I think. And we're also, the podcast has its own Twitter account at IssuesPod, ISSUES pod. You can listen to all previous episodes of the show at wehaveissues.net. There are full show notes. It's also posted on YouTube and on SoundCloud, if that's how you like your audio, and you can subscribe to it anywhere where podcasts can be subscribed to. Mm-hmm. We have an email account. It's issuespod@gmail.com. If you want to email us there. Should we talk about comics?
Yeah, let's do it.
Do you want to talk about your comic first?
I have one comic to talk about, yeah. I picked up, I think, last week, the 4th issue of Thor.
Thor number 4.
Yes. I was avoiding that, but thank
you.
No,
you did really well. I'm very conscious of those two sounds because I spent most of my childhood, most of my life, not really differentiating between the two. And
that is the most confusing thing.
My mother always corrected me, like every single time. Bloody woman can barely talk English herself, but no, she chose to always berate me about getting my fuzz and my thers mixed up. Literally can barely talk English.
It's an immigrant thing.
Yeah. So anyway, Thor number 4.
Oh, brilliant. We're finally getting some more pieces to who Thor is.
Lady Thor, you mean? Chick Thor.
Thorita, as Spider-Man pointed out.
Bloody Spider-Man. Patrick is alive in his heart.
Go back to Earth. The issue sort of starts off with Odin's son, being a little bit pissy about, everything. He's really angsty. He's been on an angsty roll for the last 3 issues, which I'm not surprised about. It
seems that nearly every vaguely Asgardy comic has featured him getting into a fight with someone related to him. So Loki,
very unstable
Angela,
at the moment.
When Jessie says Odinson, she means the real Thor.
Oh, no, he's just doing it now.
Awesome.
He gets Asgard, and he gets told 2 very nice pieces of information that Mjolnir is missing, and so is his mother. Mm-hmm. He gets very upset about that, obviously, and manages to actually track down Thor. Now, the thing is, Thor is already dealing with lots of problems, and when she sees Odin's son, she's not quite sure what to do, I don't think. She's like, okay, I'm going to deal with this the best I can, and she's trying to calm him down, which, in typical male manner, he starts to have a fight with her, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, you don't tell someone to calm down when they already think they're calm.
Yeah.
They're like, don't tell me to calm down, and then it escalates.
Yeah, so she essentially tells him to calm his tits down. He doesn't. And then which is the point where I got very angry, in which he asks her if it's his mother, and it's not.
Yes.
I got very upset.
That
really ruined my theory.
Yes, that was your theory. Well, I mean, it could still be, but probably not. Yeah.
But maybe not. That'd be weird.
It's, your theory
I really liked
was rubbish.
It, though. I would have been really happy if that happened, but that clearly wasn't the case.
My theory when the first pictures turned up was immediately disproven, so it's okay. I thought it was Angela.
I didn't think it was Angela.
No, nobody
She's
else
blonde.
did. I thought I was being super clever. Oh yeah, because her hair couldn't possibly change colour, could
well,
it?
I thought it was a Valkyrie.
Valkyrie.
Yeah, Valkyrie. But it could still be. She's up somewhere doing stuff with Guardians of the Galaxy at the moment, I think.
No, I don't know. She's kind of
doing
got a thing going with
moment.
Venom. Or she did have, but I don't really know what's going on with her.
Venom was with Guardians of the Galaxy for a little bit.
Yeah,
Thanks,
he still is, I
Bendis.
think. No, it's okay. I've been reading it. It's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Valkyrie, I think it still might be her, but she doesn't think in an Asgardian manner, so I don't know who it is still.
The characterization on her is so interesting, and she's so well written.
Oh yeah, that's pretty good.
Aaron, it's Aaron writing it, isn't it? Jason Aaron, I think.
Yeah, it is. I think so.
And I mean, it's 4th issue.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know anything about this woman.
I'm getting so frustrated.
But we are getting a real sense of her character, even though we don't know anything about her. And that's actually so unusual. Like, you normally at least know where someone's from, or you can kind of tell she's probably from Earth.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I was initially going to get very bored with it, as in, they're going to change her. I mean, they're going to change Thor, and it's going to be someone else, and it's just going to revert to like another Marvel comic, but this is really not what's happening at the moment. You're still not sure what's happening. You still don't know what the rules are with this. It's really impressive.
And it's basically been one long action. She's been in the same fight since about issue 1,
yeah, pretty
hasn't
much.
she? So it's kind of, each issue carries on immediately after the last one. I need to read the 4th issue because it sounds really good.
Yeah, and basically one of the nicest, I think, parts of that was when everything's all well. She explains the conflict. They fought for a bit. But the way she fights is incredibly powerful. So different to Thor, because Mjolnir does like completely different moves for her. Like what she does, what Mjolnir does for her in battle is so impressive that even Thor says that has never happened to me. Mjolnir has never taken to me so well. And that's when he recognizes her true strength, like that she really is worthy. She is Thor now. And he even admits when, like I said, Spidey points out, oh, what are we going to call you now? Like Thorito, which is obviously a joke from the creator after the little shit happened on the internet. But Odin's son admits himself that is Thor now, and that's what she'll be known as, which is really sweet, I think.
Have you been reading Silver Surfer?
Nope.
It's like the best Doctor Who comic around. Actually, that's not fair. The Doctor Who comic's pretty good at the moment. It's one of the best Doctor Who things around at the moment. Which is interesting because if you follow Dan Slott, he always gets really excited around Doctor Who time. So he's clearly a fan. And when you read Silver Surfer, it's so different from his stuff on Spider-Man. And it's clear that that's where he's drawing things from, his inspiration from. But there's a similar thing going on there where we've always known, if this is your first Silver Surfer comic or your first Thor comic, you wouldn't have known this. But we've always kind of known that each of these characters has a very specific dependent relationship on, in Thor's case, the hammer, Odin's son's case, the hammer, and the Silver Surfer's case, his surfboard, and that each of those things can follow orders and behave in certain ways. But in both comics, it's the first time we've really seen that as any more than just, it's a thing that does what it's told.
Object, yeah.
Which is really interesting.
And it's quite interesting that the hammer defines who Thor is. It's not that Thor defined what Mjolnir was, it's that Mjolnir defines who Thor is, which I think is an incredibly interesting concept.
But at the same time, how Mjolnir behaves is defined by who
wields it,
who Thor is, which is kind of what in Silver Surfer, it's very much the introduction of a female character who's as much a lead in the comic as the Silver Surfer is, that changes. You see her relationship with the board, and it ends up becoming an actual character in the comic. They're not very similar comics, Thor and Silver Surfer aren't, but it's just interesting hearing you talk about Mjolnir. Like, it made me think instantly of she calls the board Toomey, which is a bit weird. But
that's quite cute though.
It's cute that she's given it a name. Mjolnir already had a name. The Silver Surfer's Mew Mew. Whereas the Silver Surfer's board didn't have a name, so it's kind of unless maybe Toomey was its name all along. Is it still a pretty comic?
Yeah, it's still very pretty.
Is it Russell Dauterman?
I cannot remember.
I think it is.
It's still very pretty. It's still like the colours on it are still really nice. Definitely pick it up.
Yeah, it's a good comic. I need to get up to date on that. My comics this week, I will mention, I actually read the whole of 2000 AD this week. It's Prologue 1916. I've basically just been reading the Judge Dredd story for ages. And I realised when I was in Starbucks reading it today that if I kept waiting until I got up to date on all of the other stories, it'd take ages. So I just read the whole thing, and it's quite good. I've been kind of down on the other stories, not the backup stories, because I haven't been reading them. But they've all been pretty good. There's a nice Orlok story in here. The Orlok's part of the Dredd universe. There's a really weird story called The Order, which is a brand new thing, which is kind of good. And there's the current book of Savage is pretty interesting because it introduces a character who might have been in it in the past, but I didn't know about it. The brother of the main character who hasn't been around for decades of this comic running, has turned up. So that was quite interesting. But yeah, the main story, Judge Dredd, Dark Justice, Part 6. It's the first story in it. It's written by John Wagner with art by Greg Staples. I just want to mention it because it's this gorgeous, fully painted story about Judge Dredd and Judge Anderson, who are major Judge Dredd universe characters, versus the Dark Judges, who are major Judge Dredd baddies. But the first 5 parts of this story were real social satire stuff. There was a spaceship going out into space, in a colony ship that was totally populated by rich people. So in the first few parts, there was lots of social satire about how feckless all of the people on this spaceship were, because they're rich, basically, and how privileged they were, while at the same time they were all being attacked by the Dark Judges surreptitiously. And there was an investigation going on Earth, which was going to lead to the 2 parts of the story reaching each other. But this week and last week, it's basically aliens. It's this really claustrophobic. It's this really claustrophobic story about a bunch of judges stuck in a really hopeless situation on this ship, with this giant ship, but still very claustrophobic, because the environment is completely closed and hostile against these supernatural entities on there. And it's become this really weird. It was just a bit cheeky for most of the first few issues, with a little bit of horror, but it was all Black Mirror-esque social horror. And so now it's basically aliens. It's pretty lovely. Like, it's really nicely painted as well. But that's 2000 AD. I always love 2000 AD, even when I don't love 2000 AD. So Unbeatable Squirrel Girl issue 2 came out this week.
Yay!
I loved the first issue of this. You read the first issue?
Yeah,
of
we
this,
talked
didn't
about
you?
it.
Oh yeah, we did.
Mm-hmm.
This is written by Ryan North with art by Erica Henderson. It's the story of the unbeatable Squirrel Girl, who is one of the most unlikely Marvel superheroes there is. She's really, really odd. And in some ways she's not odd. In some ways she's just like a young woman going to college in this.
With a massive tail.
With a massive tail that she pushes down into the back of her pants to make it look like she's got an amazing arse.
Which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, she probably has got an amazing arse, as well as the tail. I don't know. It's a really unusual book anyway, because it's got the superhero stuff going on, but most of it is about her having a secret identity for the first time, not really being very good at it. But when you kind of grew up with Peter Parker and how angsty and difficult it was, the hijinks where he was trying to hide who he was were they didn't happen very often. Mostly it was about how difficult it was to have a secret identity. This is all about, she's not really doing a very good job of the secret identity thing, but luckily everything else kind of just falls into place. To say it's a bit wacky or a bit zany would kind of be a bit reductive, but it really is. It's just a fun book.
So it's quite quirky.
Yeah. In the first issue, she was fighting Kraven the Hunter. In this issue, the squirrels tell her that Galactus is coming. Because the squirrels, apparently, the squirrels are constantly watching the skies. So they noticed this. And we find out that she has 2 hours. He's going to get there in 2 hours. But she realizes very quickly that if she tries to raise the alarm, she's going to spend most of those 2 hours having Iron Man and Spider-Man and everyone, like, arguing with her about how could she possibly tell? Like, she's going to try and convince all of these superheroes that squirrels told her. She immediately knows that time's going to run out really quickly if she knows that. But this all happens. She finds out about all this while the first issue saw her deciding to go to college, because she's roughly that age. I guess college as in university.
University, I think.
And this issue sees her and her roommate, Nancy Whitehead, who's a really interesting character that we meet in the first issue. She's quite prickly. But quite cool. They warm to each other very quickly. They decide they're going to they're at orientation. It's like the first few days of college, of the new year at college. So they go to the student fair, where all of the clubs are advertising. trying to get members, basically. And although there's all of this secret identity hijinks going on and loads of cute stuff with the Squirrel and loads of stuff relating peripherally to Iron Man, which ends up having some really cool visual payoffs, which I don't want to describe because it's a really cool moment in the comic. Well, one of the we talked about sex criminals earlier on, and one of the really cool things in the first few issues of sex criminals was when they went to the sex shop for the first time,
right? And
they just have all of these little like DVD covers with ridiculous names on them and loads of little details of sex toys and stuff with ridiculous puns attached to them. When we first go to the student fair, it's only like a couple of pages this scene plays out on, but they have loads of fun. Ryan North and Erica Henderson have loads of fun coming up with names for all of the different societies. I'll only name a couple of them. So there's one called Question Quiz Club, answer yes. That's the thing on the banner. There's a Social Justice Club, which is a woman in the foreground, a girl in the foreground, and then Social Injustice Club, which is a guy in the background, and they're really glaring at each other. There's just loads of cute little puns and stuff going on these pages. It's really good. There's loads of detail that's really fun. Erica Henderson's style is so different from pretty much every other comic. It's very cartoony and very energetic and not particularly realistic at all. But her line is pretty solid. Her line is very solid and very clean. And so the characters in it, even though they're not realistically proportioned at all, are all very real and feel very grounded.
They're full of life, I found.
Yeah, absolutely. And Squirrel Girl's interactions with the people around her are really cute. She's such a lovely character. She's the only other character who's remotely as interesting that's around at the moment is Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan.
Yeah.
Both of them are pretty new characters. Squirrel Girl has a history, but like...
I draw comparisons with them all the time, especially with the hiding powers thing. Like, Peter Parker was there to sort of stand in for the teenager for what it was that for then, but now Kamala Khan is sort of doing it, and she is so adorable.
Yeah.
And so is like Squirrel Girl. Like, I want them to meet up. I want them to have a crossover.
I'm sure they will.
I really hope so. Like, I hope she bumps into her on, like, she's going around universities to have a look at university. She bumps into Squirrel Girl. I really hope that happens.
That'd be really cool. They're both weirdly overpowered characters as well. And they've got, like, we're still not sure what Squirrel Girl's powers exactly are. I've got a vague sense of what they might be, but...
It's usually to do with, like, her communication with squirrels.
They're squirrel-centric.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
she's got keen senses and, like, strengths.
But at the same time, she's very confidently deciding that going to the moon and beating up Galactus is not going to be a huge problem for her, which even means she's just crazy, which she might well be. Ryan North, I love him as a writer anyway. I love the Midas Flesh and Dinosaur Comics he does as well. But I'm surprised by how much facility he's got for these really quirky but otherwise quite normal characters. This all fits really well into the Marvel universe, which is weird considering how different it is from so many other books. It's very different from Ms. Marvel, actually, but in that way it's similar as well. Ms. Marvel is very different from everything else, but also fits very, like when Wolverine or Spider-Man turns up, it's perfectly normal, And I still love Ryan North's little, at the bottom of each page, there's really, really tiny little writing that's a cute little joke about the page that just happened. It's a really good comic. I like it a lot. And we're getting to know this cast of characters a little bit better, and they're really fun.
What I really liked about Squirrel Girl when I read the first issue was that it really loves itself. If, like, people that are writing it are really not just doing, like, a throwaway thing. They're so, like, the little things at the end of the page, at the bottom of the page. Like, no writer would do that if they were, like, writing Avengers or anything. Like, those books take themselves seriously. Like, Squirrel Girl does, but the people who are writing it, like, genuinely love Squirrel Girl. They love their character so much, which is why I prefer, I really prefer... I know Kieran Gillen and Jamie McKelvey, I keep talking about them, but they do that with their characters. They're really in love with their characters. And I get really sad when, like, they, in other comics, the characters there are just the characters.
Yeah,
they're not really treated with, like love.
There's a joy and enthusiasm to this book in particular. And, I mean, and Ms. Marvel and Squirrel Girl are both corporate comics. They're both coming out from Marvel, but they don't feel that way at all.
They definitely don't feel that way. I mean, I think the closest... I would say Dan Slott with Spider-Man.
He's doing what he wants over there.
Yeah, he really doesn't fucking care at this point.
I'm really enjoying Spider-Verse. I don't talk about it lots because I'm tending to catch up with it a few weeks after the fact, but it's like... and I've talked about Spider-Man a lot in the past, I think, but people are so fatigued by events that the immediate response to hearing about something like Spider-Verse is fatigue, cynicism, but it's such a fun story.
I was really enjoying it, but then I had to cancel my Marvel books because I really can't afford any.
It is very expensive,
especially Spider-Verse with everything that they're coming out with. You're like, oh shit, I'm missing this. Like, this is part of Spider-Verse, and this is part of Spider-Verse, and you're like, fuck.
And it is very dense. Like,
it is really dense.
I don't know how much you'd get just from reading Amazing Spider-Man. What's weird as well is that Miles. The only other book that could cross over into it, the pre-existing book that could cross over into it, actually Spider-Man 2099 does, I think.
I haven't read any of that yet.
And it's a bit weird because it's a very different sort of book.
Yeah, definitely.
Looks-wise and everything. But Miles Morales...
Ultimate Spider-Man.
That story's just continuing as is.
I really hope they don't cross over too quickly. I don't want them to just pack it into Spider-Verse because we're packing everything into Spider-Verse at the moment, because I like its own thing. Well,
but I mean, that's the slightly weird thing about Miles Morales is he's in Spider-Verse. He's one of the main characters, and he's also in he's also in an X-Men crossover at the moment as well. But his book hasn't reflected that at all. It's just an ongoing story,
and I really hope it doesn't do that.
I think it won't. I don't think it will. I think that one thing that Brian Michael Bendis doesn't have a lot longer. Like, they're folding Miles Morales. It sounds like they're folding Miles Morales into the Marvel universe anyway.
Yeah,
because the Ultimate Universe is just not financially viable anymore. I think that was literally the only comic that was selling. I have thoughts on that, but we don't have time to go into them. But
I'd get angry.
Yeah, I get the feeling Bendis is, considering how he was with the Avengers and how he is with the X-Men, he's kept the actual main Ultimate Spider-Man title fairly pure. I don't know how much control he has of that, but it doesn't really cross over into anything. Like, other characters turn up in it, but it doesn't...
It doesn't feel like a fuckfest.
Yeah.
Like it does in other teams at the moment.
He turns up in other things all the time.
Yeah.
Like, that character turns up in other things. And Bendis is writing the X-Men story, and it does go to the Ultimate Universe, but it doesn't touch the Spider-Man book.
Yeah.
That book, he's got a story he wants to tell. At the moment, he's telling a story about... Miles is finding out all about his dad, who's vanished for ages, and he's not letting all of these crossovers, which is really odd because you're getting a lot of Miles Morales in Marvel Comics at the moment. Like I said, he's one of the main Spider-Mans in Spider-Verse.
They're going to have to start doing that if they want to just like throw him into the Marvel Universe with, if they're going to get rid of Ultimate.
Well,
which I'm so upset about this.
Again, we can maybe talk about it some other time, but I'd like it if we lived and were engaged with a medium where it was possible to just have an Ultimate Spider-Man book that was Miles Morales, and that just be in its own universe, and that might be a problem.
That Spider-Man, yeah.
And they did it with they did it for a little while with Spider-Girl, which was part of a new future version of the Marvel Universe that didn't really take off except for Spider-Girl, and Spider-Girl ran for ages as well. But I just don't think I don't think the industry knows what to do with a comic like that, which is a real shame because
it is really upsetting.
But what they're doing with him turning up in loads of other stuff and it not touching his main book is kind of how comics used to do crossovers before the 80s. They didn't do crossovers, but like that's how they handled the shared universe. Spider-Man would just turn up in Fantastic Four and vice versa because they all lived in New York, but it wouldn't be part of a continuity.
I like continuity, but I mean, I like continuity if books are sharing a storyline.
Yeah.
If there's a genuine storyline that needs to be shared, but not when you're like fucking in characters just for an appearance.
Yeah.
Which always pisses me off. Isn't that right? Guardians of the Galaxy.
I'm loving Guardians. I just think you're wrong about that, but never mind.
I'm young and foolish.
The thing about Guardians of the Galaxy really is that, again, I've got a lot of time for Brian Michael Bendis because he's always enthusiastic about the books, and the writing is always enthusiastic, and he really throws a lot of ideas into them. And he's a bit like Dan Slott in that sense. He does what he wants, and people just have to go at his pace.
Yeah, but, you know, like, everyone bows down to Brian Michael Bendis, so...
Well, but I mean, I like his writing, and I'm liking Guardians of the Galaxy. The latest storyline where they went to the Venom world did something completely different with that story than I was expecting, and I was like, wow, okay, I was not expecting that, which is good. That's all I really want, I think.
I like elements of it, and I like do enjoy elements of it, but like reading it and having to like read it, you're like,
you can't afford it.
It's not even affording it, but you're like, it just makes me tired. Like, I'm about to open this book and I'm like, oh, we're still on this? Like, oh, but we're sort of jumping to this instead. Like, I don't
super
know, it's
decompressed
tiring,
storytelling. Yeah, and it's, I can see that. And I think that's always the sign. I think I've said it before, haven't I? That's always a sign that's a good time to step away from corporate comics, because unfortunately that's just how they do things. And I think that when they're charging $3.99 per comic for most of the comics, you can't make situations where people have to read 7 titles.
Exactly. That continuity really becomes an issue. Like it really reminds you that Marvel is a company.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, where you don't do that with Image, for example, or like, I don't know, IDW or whatever. It doesn't remind you that they're a company. They're just like a publishing, like, platform, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think there'll be a point, I hope there'll be a point where the medium is big enough and enough people are into it, and we all become, as a medium, it becomes mature enough, or an audience, it becomes mature enough, that people realise that actually it's perfectly okay for the two things to coexist. You know what I mean? At the moment, it seems like, and it doesn't help that Image push this more than any other company. There's very much this feeling that there's very much this kind of feeling that, well, I can't like choose to either read, you know, if it's a political decision.
Yeah.
If I choose to create our own stuff, then that's taking a stance against, you know, if I give these guys my dollar, then that's making a statement about Marvel or something like that. When actually, no, it's just, you either want the soap opera,
which is
or you want the
fun.
self-contained stories that like belong to someone. Like, I'm not saying there isn't loads of really sketchy ethical stuff that's gone on with creators in the past at Marvel and DC, because there is. But I mean,
are we going to get onto that?
But no, and I don't really know enough about it. But it's like, but in terms of what you choose to read, you're either into the soap opera or you're not. I've had a conversation with. You even have to make that call if you're reading DC or Marvel. People always see those as, oh, I'm a Marvel person, I'm a DC person. But really with those, you're making a choice between, for me, I think you're making a choice between mythology or like soap opera.
For me, it was, when I was first starting out, I was like, who I think my money is going to go to. Because, you know, you don't have like 60 fucking pounds every, I don't know, week to spend on comics. You shouldn't be doing that. So it's either which continuity I'd prefer, because they're both heavily based on that. And at the time I was first looking at comics, they definitely were with the New 52.
Yeah,
there
absolutely.
was nothing standalone that you could have read at that point.
Which, when the New 52 was kind of supposed to tidy all that stuff up, was
really
a bit horrifying. Yeah.
But then on the other hand, AVX just happened in Marvel, and everything reset to 1, and all you had to do is just like quickly look up the history of something, and then you would get exactly what you wanted with Marvel, which at the time seemed like a better option. But I think for many people, it's whose continuity am I going to give the money to? Although I know lots of people that read both.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think that's the smart way to be.
Yeah.
But I think it's for me, and both of them are very focused on continuity. But Marvel is more about characters is more like pretending to shake up the status quo.
Yeah.
Whereas there's a lot of mythology and icons. DC trade in icons. They know they've got Superman and Batman and stuff like that. And although things will happen within those, they're not. Their focuses seem to be different. And so when I read a comic, I'm really into seeing normal characters in abnormal situations, kind of human characters in abnormal situations. But that isn't what you're looking for with Superman or Batman. They're symbols. That's what they are.
You don't get Bruce Wayne or Clark Kent anymore, really. I don't know. I know that Wonder Woman is not particularly good at the moment, from what I heard, which is kind of depressing. But then the people that I see reading DC now are, unless they were really there from the beginning, which only a couple of my friends do, are reading the issues that really have nothing to do with what's happening with Future's End, I think, or something, whatever's happening now.
I'm reading Grayson. I think I've talked about a couple. Grayson and Gotham by Midnight, and
Gotham Academy is another popular one at the moment because it's got nothing to do with anything else.
Even though they are part of the Batman family, they're not part of the soap opera. Not the soap opera.
But the big drama
I think the soap opera
right
and the
now.
continuity. They don't. You don't need to be reading anything else to read those books. And I'm surprised because I haven't read anything at DC. I tried everything when the DC 52 started, and I didn't stick with anything. Wonder Woman was pretty good actually to begin with.
That's I heard that really goes downhill after apparently.
But yeah, anyway, so I've talked so much about not having read DC 52 and having had one of my main things that I keep saying online, boringly on Facebook and everywhere else, and getting almost unhealthily into talking about online, is the fact that we don't have to if the problem is Marvel and DC or something that Marvel and DC are doing, it's so easy for us to just step away from them and do something else. I'm boring about that, I think, on Facebook. And yet, I've just been talking about Marvel and DC for 10 minutes and kind of forcing you to as well.
We were going to stay positive.
It's probably about 50. I'm pretty positive. I mean, great. These are pretty good.
They have very good titles lately, yeah.
But sometimes you just have to look a bit further away from what's being sold to you, the stuff that your comic shop is buying 400 copies of.
Yeah.
Things are interesting because it's an art form and a media that has so much diversity in it in terms of the sort of stories you can read.
Yeah.
And yet we make really conservative choices as an audience all the time, which is weird. This is why I keep going, but Image isn't the only other company. There are so many others. And yet I'm about to talk about an Image book. Right, so I haven't followed Grant Morrison into everything over the last few years. I didn't read. I have it on very good authority from people I respect that his Batman stuff was amazing, but I haven't really read anything of his religiously, probably since New X-Men. It's been a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
The first issue of a new Grant Morrison comic came out from Image this week, with art by Chris Burnham, who I think he worked with on one of the Batman books, either around the beginning of DC 52. Excuse me. It's called Nameless. I think it's coloured by Nathan Fairbairn. The credits are really difficult to read.
I hate that.
It's a really nice design choice, but it's just a blank wall of sort of computery text on the front page. But I think it's probably coloured by Nathan Fairbairn. I didn't know anything about it beyond it's got a really striking cover with sort of astronauts with weird symbols on them. Everything Grant Morrison does he's very interested in magic and he's very interested in metaphysics.
Just everything that Grant Morrison does is meta, I think, is a good summary of him.
And he introduces that a little bit into everything. But this, so Nameless. It opens on lots of weird symbology. You don't quite know what's going on. It immediately makes it clear that it's not going to be it's going to be quite profane. The language is quite bad. It's quite violent. You see a family being slaughtered. On the second page, you see a family being slaughtered by weird lizard people. And you get this sense of the world just being fucked. The refrain, death toll horror gets repeated. And then you get this weird scene that you're not sure whether it's real or not. I'm not going to do it page by page. It's just useful for me to do the first few pages like this. You see a scene that you think is quite grounded and might be related to the last scene of a man who's clearly exploring in a swamp, but then that quickly gets really odd. Okay. The easiest way to describe the story in this first issue is basically to say that it's like Inception if Grant Morrison had written Inception. That's really...
That is a mindfuck I'm not ready for.
Yeah, it's kind of... what it quickly becomes clear is that the guy we're following is moving through dreamscapes.
Right.
Moving through layers, very similar to Inception, moving through layers of dreams. But when Grant Morrison writes a dream and Chris Burnham draws a dream, it's actually like a dream, not like in Inception where it's a different sort of movie that maybe has some special effects stuff going on. This is weird. Language breaks down, cause and effect starts to break down, and things don't quite make sense. There are characters that recur. There's a shrouded lady who recurs throughout this. The lizard people are kind of a recurring theme. But this might just be the reader, i.e. me, needing a bit more security when he's reading something, as I know we talked about Odyssey and my slight bafflement at that. But in this case, I really do think that it's best to just read it and not try and work out necessarily what's going on until around the middle point at which it starts to become clear. It becomes much more apparent what's going on around the middle, but it being Grant Morrison, he maintains the dream state and he's consistent the whole way through the first part of it. And then towards the end, it's much clearer what's happening. A few of the characters, the central protagonist, who we still don't know very much about by the end of the first issue, and a couple of other characters start to resolve, and we know a bit more about them, and we start to know more about what's actually going on and what the stakes are, at least as far as we know at the end of the first issue. It's more like Invisibles, which I loved, than anything else I've read by Grant Morrison.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like Invisibles meets in Inception. That structure and that concept of someone going into dreams and that being what they can do and going through the layers was very familiar to me from Inception. Partly because it's a great fucking idea, I think, really. I like it more how it's done here, because I don't dream as lucidly as they seem to in Inception. The art by Chris Burnham. Now, when I first saw his work, I think it was probably on whichever Batman book it was they were working on. And I think he might even have been... replacing Frank Quitely on the book. I remember seeing his style and thinking it was very similar to either Frank Quitely. His inspirations were really clear. It seemed to be it looked lovely and it looked like its own thing, but it seemed very clearly influenced by Frank Quitely and very clearly influenced by Jeff Darrow, kind of very detailed. His page layouts were like Frank Quitely, which is a very specific sort of look. Yeah. But his line work was more like Jeff Darrow. It was more untidy than Frank Quitely's, and it's
very hard to do Frank Quitely, though. I think.
Yeah, I think so, and I don't think he was trying to copy it. I think that was just clearly where his inspirations were. This looks very much more like his own thing, but of course, because he's that sort of artist working with Grant Morrison, and Grant Morrison's the sort of writer who informs, depending on what he's writing, he informs how the artist draws quite a lot, like Alan Moore, probably like Warren Ellis. You can tell that the writing is influencing how it looks, regardless of how the page breaks down, regardless of who the artist is, I think. Which isn't to understate what the artists do.
Yeah.
It's just that you can recognise Warren Ellis pacing on a page, and you can recognise Grant Morrison's style on a page. There's very dense sort of layouts to a lot of it. And it's very hard sometimes to read a Grant Morrison page, especially when he's working with a super detailed artist on something that's quite personal to him, because there's lots of symbology, and it's unclear which things that are going on in the background are important and which things are decoration, if you see what I mean, because nearly everything's important. But Chris Burnham does an amazing job on this. It's really at times again, I'm describing an artist by describing other artists, which isn't really fair, but it's the stuff that I like about Nick Pitara's art, who does the Manhattan Project, is kind of visible here, but everything's really grounded. When you're in the real world or when you're in locations, they're much more solid and real than in a Nick Pitara comic, which is much more sort of scratchy and caricatured. That isn't the case here, but the line is it kind of vibrates.
It's quite really stylistic, cool.
Yeah. It's a really interesting comic. It's Grant Morrison weird, but it's also got this the high concept stuff in it is really interesting. And the threat level is really interesting, and I don't think I've really described it very well. When we were talking about sex criminals, the thing I wanted to mention is there's one of the pieces of symbology in this. There's a panel that just comes out of nowhere on one page that is basically a sort of a helix-shaped Ouroboros. Right. So it's a snake eating its own tail, but it's also a vagina trying to eat a penis. It's very weird. You really have to see it to know what I mean. But it's amazing. And I think the best way to read it, although listener, you can read however the hell you want. Probably, unless you can't read, in which case I'm really sorry. But I recommend, reading it, but not expecting it to start making sense until around the middle, and then going back and rereading it from the beginning, which is what I plan to do.
Yeah. I think with Grant Morrison, you just need to... I've always said that anything you read by Grant Morrison, unless it's some of the Batman stuff, you just need to read it through, try and ground yourself in the reality, and then it will start making sense.
If you've got a taste for it, you need to trust him, basically. Yeah, I think that's right. It's a really interesting comic, and it's not like anything else I'm reading at the moment, so it's pretty cool. I like
good Grant Morrison stuff.
Yeah. Max Barnard sent something in, so we'll listen to that now, and then we'll be back to say goodbye, I guess.
Oh.
Well, hello there. We have issues. This is Maxy B. I also have issues, and that's all it needs to be a part of this, right? Issues, because that's all I've got. Yeah. I'm going to take you on a long journey. It's not necessarily a straight timeline as such, and it has some heavy biases towards coverage of stuff I actually know. But the hope is to educate you all a little on Japan's comic history. The history of manga, if you will. If only because it's pretty relevant to the comics market nowadays, being almost definitively the largest market for comics in the world. But that's to come. See, we've got to go back to the earliest days, the origins of the comics form in Japan, full stop. Something that can be traced back to several points in history, be it the 19th century, the 17th century, or even really the 12th century, depending on who you ask. So, suffice to say, this will be a series of quite a few parts. But before even that, to understand everything we've got to cover here, we have to actually kind of establish what modern manga actually is, in its most reductive form. Manga it's a catch-all term for comics in Japan, and it's been adopted outside of Japan to refer to specifically Japanese comics. And it's a fun word, translating pretty much to whimsical drawings. The sort of soft term that I wish we could just outright replace comics with sometimes. You know, like this. "Hey, have you read this week's big whimsical drawings yet?" said James. "Yeah, I can't believe what Dan Slott is doing with Spider-Man. I might just drop Marvel whimsical drawings forever," replied Nick. "Yeah, DC whimsical drawings for life, yo. It's not a real whimsical drawing unless Batman's in it," agreed James. I'll be honest, I don't think those are very good impressions, and I feel quite ashamed of myself. Moving on. Most manga are serialized, not in their own separate issues, like most Western comics, but rather in these cheap black and white phone book-sized anthologies made on the rattiest arse paper you will have ever seen in your life. Sizes and, publishing scales change wildly from anthology to anthology, but by and large the average is to be either weekly or monthly, with around 20 titles published within at any given time. Monthly titles average around 30 or more pages, weekly rarely go above 20. These then get shifted to a slightly higher quality paper for the tankobon, the collected editions, though these are still sold at ridiculously cheap prices. Should a series actually be notably successful, odds are good they'll be reprinted again in either pocket-sized volumes with higher page counts or in high-quality Kanzenban editions, with stuff like hardcovers and high-quality colour pages included in them. Which is all a bit needlessly nitty-gritty, but stuff like this is a good marker to finding out if a classic series was actually popular, to see the post-serialization treatment it gets from a publisher. You know, in Western terms, it'd be kind of like seeing how many different ways they've reprinted Watchmen. Fucking a lot. They've reprinted Watchmen a lot. You're the comics podcast, you should know this. There's also some key differences in publication strategy in the mainstream. Again, just really in the mainstream, but it makes a great comparison point to the Western mainstream. Whilst a long-running franchise or title in the West, like, say, The Amazing Spider-Man, might have passed between an endless stream of writers and artists since its inception in 1962, and be collected in complete sets or renumbered collections, a similarly long franchise, like, and I'm going to say this wrong, Kochira Kasushikaku Kamiyari Koen Mai Hasushujojo. That's Tim. Hasushujojo? Alright, right? It translates to this is the police station in front of Kamiyari Park in Katsushika Ward. I'm really bad at pronouncing Japanese, as my listeners at FEV will not stop letting me know. I do a podcast about manga. No. And I'm shit at Japanese. I mean, I can read it okay, but don't ever have me say it out loud. I mean, shit. But yeah, for the most part, it's known as Kochikame because its name is really complicated, right? But it's been published non-stop, week on week, since 1976, and only ever been worked on by Osamu Akimoto and his various teams of assistants, and the volumes are collected and numbered continuously from Volume 1 all the way up to the recent Volume 193, which is daunting, to say the least. No one expects you to own or read all of it, but just seeing that volume number can make you run screaming. Not to say the same doesn't happen when Amazing Spider-Man renumbers at 600 or whatnot for an anniversary, but still, the relentless continuation of this numbering is the key difference. Another good point of contrast would be, say, Naruto, because, I mean, Kochikame's run for much more than 600 issues, so it's a poor comparison point, whereas Naruto ran for just over 700 chapters, depending on who you ask about a side story about Kakashi. And that came in at over 70-something volumes, so that would still be quite scary. I mean, One Piece is longer, but none of you guys are buying One Piece, so there you go. I'm digressing a lot, you can tell. Of course, on a smaller scale, there are original self-published works, both in a similar webcomic scene to our own, or in the small press like the UK's amazing independent market. But by and large, as with Western comics, it's the mainstream that has the stronger history to it. They're behemoths made of time and money, if nothing else. But of course we have to get as far as those publishers actually existing, and that's some time away. Join me next time as we go all the way back to basically anything that happened before World War II. Because, as with a lot of history, World War II is the turning point. Bye!
So, I think that's us done. We, literally talked about 4 comics.
I feel really bad. We'll make it up next time.
No, but we've talked for an hour and a...
we've done
half.
it?
Yeah, no, we talked for ages.
It was the penis stuff.
But yeah, we had to catch up. I haven't seen you in weeks.
I know. There's lots to catch up on.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get coffee sometime as well.
Yeah, but we'll probably record it. Yeah. You're becoming... It's like me and James. I basically don't see you unless we've got microphones. But that's cool. That's clearly how we've chosen to live our lives and manage our relationships, so it's all fine.
Brilliant.
Listener, thank you for listening. You have, as always, been awesome. Max, thank you for your contribution. You will have heard an advert, listener, for a Kickstarter project for an audio play from some friends of ours. So, obviously, if that sounds appealing, go and pitch in on that. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's us, Jessie.
That's it.
It's always lovely to talk to you about comics and cocks.
Likewise. Oh, bye.
Bye-bye. Unsolicited dick pics are a bad idea.
Yeah.
I think. But there's this difficult situation where if you are in the sort of relationship where you're sending pictures to each other.
I was about to defend that, yeah.
Men are kind of stuck because there are loads of things. I mean, maybe this is just me being really heteronormative as well, but there are loads of things that are potentially arousing, and there are loads of abstract parts of a woman's body that she can show off and tease.
Yeah.
Whereas men have their face and their cock. There's not really a lot.
Well, unless they've got abs and things. But even that, I don't think...
unfair.
Yeah.
I mean, let's
I
just
agree,
talk about
though.
it like there isn't such a thing.
If a girl asks for it, or you, suggest it, and then, that's all consensual, then I think that's fair game, especially if you're in a long-term relationship, or you don't get to see each other much, or you are trying to tease each other or whatever.
But they are weird. And, a dick pic, that's not really...
They can look pretty.
Yeah, but...
What if it's the dick of someone you love? Well, you wouldn't get that, because you're not a dick lover.
But it's like you're right about teasing.
Right.
But then it feels like it's the ultimate spoiler. In a way.
Right, okay, so there's nothing more.
Yeah, we can go from the face to the... That's what we've got.
But you could have, your, jeans over it or something.
Yeah.
That is teasing.
Although, again, that supposes that one is endowed enough that you can even tell.
That is pretty depressing if you can't.
I know, but a lot of people probably can't. I'm not talking about... This is literally not me talking about me at this point.
I was so confused by squirting the other day that I had to, look it up. I was like, how the fuck do they do that?
Confused how? Wow. I don't know if any of this is going to get included. We certainly seem to be talking in our podcast voices.